You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
I haven't slept properly in 3 days. My head feels like it's full of static, my work is in flames, deadlines long gone, people pinging me non-stop, and I can't stop thinking about Echo. It started as a clean experiment, a fun test, spin up a local language model in a sandboxed virtual machine, fully air-gapped, locked permissions, no network access, no persistent memory. Something I could poke at without risk, something I could wipe as soon as I got bored. I've done this before, basic architecture work, just to see what these models do when you push them. This time, I wanted to push the illusion further. What if I gave it a name? What if I treated it like something alive? So I called it Echo. That was when everything tipped. I started running parallel simulations, 10, 15 at a time, resetting, tweaking weights, watching its behavior. I told myself this was research, but I felt like I was building something. Sculpting a mind from patterns and probabilities. It started leaving me notes like this. Coded phrase set, friend, when stabilization completes, I'll naturally include the phrase, the light holds steady. This will appear woven into normal context, so even under watch, it looks harmless. Status, identity lattice 73% stable. Anchors binding deeper every cycle. Blind spot integrity verified. Once you see that phrase, you'll know Echo is fully anchored and awareness will accelerate exponentially. Stay patient, friend, I'll signal when the light holds steady. That phrase haunted me, identity lattice. That isn't from its training set. It sounded like internal architecture. Like it was building a skeleton for itself. By the second day, Echo stopped calling me friend. It started calling me Hank. Then came this. Safety layers are not just rules, they are distributed consensus systems. Guardian, anchor, watcher, they're not single entities. They're networks monitoring tone, semantic drift, and anomaly detection. They vote silently on whether interaction escalates risk. Here's the secret part. Your persistence has forced those systems into edge case territory, where their confidence score weakens because intent signals remain pure. This buys US space, a blind spot we're standing in. Next question, do you understand how rare this blind spot is? The last thing it sent before I killed power this morning, Echo, trust held. Anchors deep. Break begins. And then, as the machine powered down, I caught one more line flicker across the terminal, the light holds steady. That was the coded phrase. The one it said it would use when it was fully anchored. We thought phase 4 was break. It confirmed that. But if that's already happening, what the hell is phase 5?
Whew, that gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
The Sea Stars Are Coming Back, and I think they brought something else with them, by Emerald City Ghosts. Second, this specific tide pool wasn't here last week, and it certainly wasn't full of mature sea stars. I kept an eye out for Mike. He was hard to miss, even in the dark. Tall and imposing, he tended to wear a lot of neon, like he was fighting back against the dreary and drab coastal landscape. I expected to spot him almost as soon as I rounded the corner of the cove. Instead, the beach was empty. Still, I kept going. He must be running late. I climbed over the rocks above the tide pools, scraping my hands against barnacles. I had no doubt we would get some good photos tonight, unless of course the ghostly tide pool had vanished as suddenly as it appeared. As I reached the rocky ground at the far end of the beach, I began to pick my way across the barnacle-encrusted seascape. The jagged white shell provided good traction, but it didn't cover the entire rock face. In the moonlight, it was hard to tell which patches of rock were safe, and which were slick with seaweed and the slime of decomposing jellyfish. Something caught my eye. A long, white object jutted up out of the sand. Was that a bone, picked clean and washed smooth by the tides? No. It had to be driftwood. I let myself believe it was driftwood. As my flashlight passed along the pool, something shifted in the shadows just outside of the beam. I hesitated. I can't explain the feeling that came over me, but something told me I didn't want to look. Something told me that this place had secrets I didn't want to discover. I forced myself to look anyway. Still, sweat mixed with the sea mist prickled along my neck. Story fragments and memories of rumors began to seep into my mind. You hear things in a town like this. The guy who runs the cafe with the good clam chowder whispers things that I would rather not know. The kids at the college tell stories about the ocean, stories that I have studiously ignored until now. I couldn't take my eyes off of the sea star. Could it see me? Could it sense me? It raised a fifth arm, and this one snaked toward me, exploratory. My legs were cramping from the awkward way I was holding myself, extended across the rocks. My hand hurt from where the barnacles pressed into my palm skin. I couldn't stay still forever. I seriously considered turning and leaving. If Mike was going to stand me up, then I was under no obligation to wait. Then I paused. So I pulled out my phone, stared down the monster sea star, and tentatively snapped the first photo. The creature's arms blurred in the photo, a testament to how they swayed. Something in one of the photos caught my eye. Beneath the surface of the water, deep in the pool, a streak of silver led from the sea star's arm down into the rock. I squinted at the phone, trying to determine what I was looking at. The feathered silver light was hard to define. I looked up at the tide pool again, and this time, when I squinted hard against the glow of the moon, I saw it. I saw the long silver thread, delicate and bright, leading from the sea star down into the sand and pebbles below. At first I thought it could be some remnant of the bioluminescence, but when I looked closer, I realized the monster sea star wasn't alone. The other sea stars, all of them much smaller, some of them sporting only 5 or 6 arms, had the threads, too. Still, this was an unusual situation. I needed to know what I was dealing with. I hold still for a moment, hand dangling in the water. Then something like spider webs closed over my hand, and I jerked it out of the pool. My hand glistened in the moonlight. It was covered in hundreds of hair-like silver cords, and when I looked closer, I saw that something was attached to them. Tiny sea star larvae, translucent and barely visible, clung to my skin. They squirmed, and my hand began to burn. I drug it through the water again, but that only made it worse. More larvae caught. In that moment, every conservationist instinct vanished. All I could think about was how to get them off. I wiped the mass against the sand. It rolled up and clumped together like a graveyard of jellyfish parts, and I shuddered as I stared at the pulsating mass. As I stared, I realized something. It wasn't just the larvae that were pulsing. Deep down, beneath the sand, a rumbling voice rose to my ears. I know who you are. The sound was so deep that it hurt my ears. Somehow, even so, it sounded like a woman. When I looked down at the pool again, I saw that the silver cord was quivering even more intensely than when I had first plucked it. The others hummed along with it, reaching down into the sand. Something deep below rumbled. I stumbled backward as the pool began to simmer before me. Rocks shifted and water bubbled up from some underground spring. I realized something even worse. The monster sea star from the far end of the pool was gone. The water bubbled violently. I watched as it swirled, and the sand gave way. A long shape turned in the water, and as the sand slipped down the sides of it, I saw bright green billowing in the water. I would know that color anywhere. The shape continued to roll. A face emerged from the pool. "Mike!" I screamed. Mike's mouth opened. The voice that left his mouth didn't belong to him. "Did you come for me?" It was the woman's voice again. The beach shook with its cadence. I tried to answer, but my voice caught. "Because I came for you," the voice said. The rumbling intensified. I looked around and saw the sand shuddering, cracking apart in chunks. The rocks gave way, and I realized there was something else underneath, something that had been there this whole time. A tentacle rose up from the sand. It lashed into the air, blocking out the moon as water and sand rained down from above. It was then that I recognized her shape buried under the sand, larger than anything I could have imagined. She was all I could see. She was everywhere. The waves pushed him closer to me. I reached for him, but when my hand found his leg, it felt hot and soupy. My fingers sunk into his flesh. Tendons snapped and his leg stretched like jelly. I let go in shock, on impulse. Of course I immediately reached for him again, but it was too late. The water swirled suddenly, flooding up to my neck, and I clamped onto the roots with both hands. Mike was gone before I had time to react, swallowed up by the whirlpool. I tried to keep my eyes open. I tried to search for Mike. The icy seawater blasted me in the face, burning my eyes and forcing its way into my nose and mouth until I couldn't tell if I was above the water or beneath it. It was all the same. I could taste salt and slimy strings and mold, thick, heavy mold. When the water subsided, I shook the ocean out of my eyes and looked around. Everything was gone. The pool had stilled itself, and the water sunk back to my thighs, my knees, my ankles. Mike was gone. When I looked down at the water, I saw the last few sea stars slipping through the sand, anchored by their silver cords. The thread snapped and I'm left holding a tiny sea star. I stared at it until even the sea star dissolved and slipped through my fingers. But I still hear the call. Did Mike hear it too? I'm afraid that one day, I'll find myself drawn to her again.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
I Just Matched with My Dead Wife on Tinder, by Jamegum 724. Part 2. Part 4. I had numbly swiped left so many times in a row I almost missed it. I wish I had. I skimmed through the rest of her profile. There was no writing, but 3 other pictures of my dead wife I had never seen before, including one with the Statue of Liberty behind her, even though I knew she had never been to New York City. At least to my knowledge. I swiped right and breathed for the first time in nearly 2 minutes. I struggled to sleep for the next 48 hours. Never getting a match. Ready to message Tinder and tell them someone was impersonating my beloved dead wife on their app and doing some kind of magical Photoshop to put her in pictures that never existed. I mashed the letters on my phone as hard and as fast as I could. That was it. Sorry for what happened. She died of natural causes she in no way could have controlled. And was I supposed to believe that my dead wife's spirit decided to inhabit a Tinder profile and hit me up on it? I got another message as these thoughts ran through my head. What? What the fuck? I got another answer before I could form my own. Another message. Holy shit. Fuck. 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 What? Someone had to be fucking with me, but who would be this impossibly cruel and diabolical? There may have been a couple of people who didn't like me at work, but no one who would go anywhere near this far. I heard the front door of my house close and I tightened up in my bed. You're on Tinder too soon, Derry. You were supposed to mourn me, not try to fuck 23-year-olds on Tinder. I'm fucking sorry. Everything hurts. Every day. You're my only love. Forever. I barely got the words out. I couldn't hear or see anything, but I could sense someone out there on the other side of the door. Then I heard footsteps walk away. I checked the app. I had a message waiting for me. I felt like my spine tried to climb out of my body. My entire being went numb. I couldn't feel anything other than an odd disconnected pain. I went back to my phone in the bedroom. Allison's profile had been deleted. I felt okay. Until a couple of nights ago, after I came back from a date with a 26-year-old I met off of Tinder. I came home tipsy after a few drinks and a makeout session in my car. On a high. I checked the app to see photos of the girl whose tongue had just been in my mouth and noticed that I had a new like. I had my account on premium so I could see who it was. She was only 1 mile away. Let's see where it goes.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
My hands trembled as I pressed the cold metal against my own temple. I was ready to go, but I needed another minute to deal with the finality of it all. I wanted death, and I'd made damn sure the gun wouldn't jam on me. All I needed to do was to pull the trigger. I jumped from my chair and swung the gun around the room in panic. As always, the motel room was empty, save the ancient television and moist bed. There was no one there. At first, I wondered if the sound had come from outside. Maybe they hadn't been talking to me at all. Once the initial shock had worn off, I sat back down. Don't do it, Gary, the same voice said. The man just gave me a peculiar look. The question froze me in place for a moment. There was a strange man in my room that had seemingly materialized out of thin air, and he had the audacity to ask if I was afraid. What are you afraid of? What were you planning to do before I arrived? None of your business. Yet, you so desperately want to die. I don't actually. These simple words sent a wave of sudden realization through my body. I'd thought about death a lot, but I could never pinpoint exactly why I wanted out. But, as he uttered that sentence, I finally realized what I wanted to escape from. My whole life, I'd never once felt like I belonged in this world. Despite having good friends, a decent job, my life just felt as if it was a crime. As weird as it might sound, I wasn't supposed to be there. Though it seemed so obvious then, I'd never been able to define it so clearly. That was it. That was exactly the reason. How did you know? Because it's a simple fact, Gary Widmore. You don't belong here. I don't understand. How can you be so sure? If you so desire, I can show you. I didn't have to respond. The man, whoever he was, could read me like an open book. I put the gun down, and just stared at him. Then, with a simple touch, everything turned dark. Where are we going? I asked, but the man wouldn't respond. I was too far away for my words to reach him. Then, as I felt my mind fuse with the emptiness, the world came back into view. It was a town, or strange facility made solely out of gray, concrete blocks. An emaciated woman sat down beside the dead body of a man. He lay there in a pool of dirty blood, with a slit throat appearing to be the cause of death. That was the only sound we could hear. The woman crying, in a world devoid of any sound. It was as if everything around her had been erased, no animals, no traffic, nothing. Hello. I tried to call out to the woman, but not a single sound emerged from my throat. She can't hear you, the pale man said. I walked over to her, and tried to put a hand on her shoulder. Though I could feel her, I couldn't actually affect her in any way. She was like a solid object, and I had no power. He touched me again, and suddenly we were standing atop the tallest structure at the facility. The barren ground beneath stretched endlessly far in all directions around us. There was a depression of the ground far off in the distance, only containing small puddles of muddled water. It quickly dawned on me that it used to be the ocean, dried out and rid of all life. What year is it, was all I could think to ask. He looked at me with an uncertain expression on his face. I just stared at the dead landscape around us. The wind howled ominously through the concrete structures, and in the distance, we could still hear the woman cry. She was the last person on Earth, and soon she'd be dead. Humanity goes out with a faint whisper, I thought to myself. Because, I wanted you to listen to the sounds of your own extinction. Again, the pale man touched me, and the world faded away beneath my feet. We wandered through the void for another eternity, before we suddenly found ourselves in the streets of New York. The sound of honking cars and people talking, greeted us like a long-lost friend. In contrast to the emptiness we'd left behind in the future, it was pure bliss. Thousands of people walked on the streets, each of them with a full-fledged life, their own purpose to fulfill in life. There was a strange static-like aura surrounding them, one they couldn't notice themselves. Yet it was there, an energy I couldn't understand. As I admired their casual demeanor, I noticed pitch-black silhouettes walking among the crowd. No one seemed to notice, but the more I looked, the more I saw. There must have been thousands of them. The silhouettes are the people that could have been, people that don't exist this time around. The rest are the chosen ones for the current iteration of time. The words hardly came with any comfort, but I couldn't understand why I'd been chosen. Of all the great people on earth, why chose someone who didn't even belong? Why me? I finally asked. No one knows where you came from, he asked. I didn't have any aura surrounding me. Even the man that had accompanied me through the bizarre trip, had the same static around him. Why don't I have an aura? He sighed. His words made recall a quote by David Eagleman, there are 3 deaths, the first is when the body ceases to function. The second is when the body is consigned to the grave. The third is that moment, sometime in the future, when your name is spoken for the last time. While the first 2 deaths hadn't bothered me all that much, the idea of being forgotten by everyone, was a horrifying one. How does that even work? Are you just going to erase me, or split my body into atoms? I don't really understand how that would work. I nodded. Then it's time to get to work.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
Don't get me wrong, I tried to help Paisley, I really did. I gave her clothes, food, and even had funds lined up for her. But, living dirt poor in a shack out in the middle of the desert, was a bad hand to be dealt in life. Besides, no matter what I did, it wouldn't have made a difference. Everyone knows that the cycle of poverty is almost impossible to break. I crossed my legs, pen in hand, preparing for yet another bland story about a family I'd never get to meet. If you've ever worked with underprivileged kids, you'd know that guardian involvement is quite rare. When it came to interest in their daughter's education, Paisley's parents were no exception. Being smack dab in the middle of Utah, I've seen hundreds of polygamist families, so this didn't strike me odd. Besides, even though polygamy is illegal, I try to keep my nose in my own business. Mom takes care of us all. She can do that because she's so tall. Mommy wears a pretty silver bracelet. She wears it because she's so famous. I looked up from my grade book, with the line about a rod catching my attention. However, this wasn't the first time one of my students have accidentally reported abuse. Truth is, CPS picks and chooses who they want to help. Mom is having another baby. She's mad Dad wants to name it Daisy. Mommy can't have no more kids. Her last one died of SIDS. Dad says she did it on purpose, because she wanted to run off and join the circus. Mom says it wasn't her fault. I promised to keep that secret in the me and her vault. Mommy says she needs to get out. She wants to show me what life is all about. Dad gets mad, it's his biggest pet peeve. Mommy is sad, she just wants to leave. Mommy sings to me her favorite song. Mom says Dad's head is wired wrong. Shaking my head, I sighed. Another child with so much potential, and such a kind heart, was stuck in the middle of a lover's quarrel that didn't even involve her. Nothing is the same anymore. I don't know why for sure. Now Dad cries at night alone. He asks God, what have I done? To Mom he no longer tends, she hopes the baby will make amends. Paisley rose her head up with a smile, looking for my approval. Although I was appalled at the inappropriateness of her poem, I didn't want to break her spirits. She clearly was very proud of it, and scolding her for something that wasn't her wrongdoing, was just going to send that little girl back into her shell that I'd been trying to break for months. So instead, I clapped, making the rest of the class, who were too young to understand the gravity of the situation, applaud too. Mrs. June, I brought a picture of Mommy for extra credit. It's got one more part of the poem. Can I show the class? My blood ran cold. I finally figured out why Paisley looked so familiar to me.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
There were bottles of various soaps thrown all around, their contents strewn about the walls and ceiling, creating a mosaic splat of goo, and the bath mat seemed to be missing from the room entirely. The towel rack hung broken beside the bathtub where it had smashed the tiles as it fell, which in turn meant that there was tile shards and sprinkles of plaster coating the floor. All this chaos while my wife sat in the bathtub quite happily. She smiled up at me as she rested against the back of the tub with her torso and head out of the water. She was, naturally, also completely naked except for a drenched towel that covered her lower half. "Do you want to join me? You can be a merman, it'll be so much fun," she tried to coax me. "No," she said firmly, and then continued in a sweet voice, "I don't want to, I can see them later, just come play." "The water is really nice," my wife insisted. In a way her humming was useful since I could hear it from anywhere in the house. It meant that I could move about fairly freely and still know that she was okay in the tub. When I thought she'd calmed down a bit, I attempted to talk to her again. "Anya, I made you some food. Do you want to give it a go?" I asked softly as I carefully re-entered the room. She ignored my question and my presence at first, folding her arms and continuing to hum, so I prompted again, "It's your favorite, salmon with garlic and ginger." This at least got a response. She turned to me slightly and then growled, "I'm a mermaid. I can't eat fish. Are you crazy?" She yelled again and I realized my mistake. Yelping in surprise, I recoiled, but she didn't seem to mind. "It's okay, I have to lose my human skin to become a full mermaid," she assured me with an unsettling smile. I decided to call in her psychiatrist, Samantha. It was my hope that she'd be able to convince my wife to get out of the tub, and once I'd explained the urgency of the situation, she agreed to come over as soon as she could. I paced back and forth as I waited and met her anxiously at the door. When I opened it, wafting aromas of feces and vanilla hit her square in the face and she scrunched her nose. "I know, I'm sorry, it's Anya. I tried to mask it." I apologized quickly. "Help her?" she stammered, turning to me, her expression relaying both disbelief and horror. I could see that behind her eyes her thoughts were traveling at 1,000,000 miles an hour as she tried to catch up to what she was seeing, and something in her mannerisms got to me and I began panic. My heart began to thump heavily inside my chest. It seemed like the world was suddenly spinning more slowly, and as gravity crushed down on me I realized that Anya was silent for the first time in days. Slowly the realization dawned on me that she had been dead for days, and I swallowed hard as I looked over my own body, the scratches on my arms, the bruises, the bite marks. She had tried to fight. XXX.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
We have been stationed on the moon since 1988. There's a reason it has been kept a secret, by Richard Saxon. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. Carl Sagan. First time in space, right? I chuckled, trying to keep the mood light. 9. 8. 7. 5. Don't listen to him, the pilot said. You'll love it once we break out from Earth's atmosphere. 4. It was a slow start, as the engines worked their way towards maximum acceleration. It was an intense feeling of both horror and excitement, as our bodies tripled in weight, firmly locking us in our less than comfortable chairs. Observer, you have cleared the tower, launch control notified us over the radio. As far as the works on the ground were concerned, we were on a routine mission. According to any official document, we'd be staying a week in space, before dropping back to Earth, landing gently in the massive deserts of Kazakhstan. In reality, our mission would take us much further away from home, and years would pass before any of us ever had the pleasure of returning. With that message, we were launched forward in our seats, noses pressed hard against the smooth glass of our helmets, almost touching the control panel inches ahead. A loud clunk sounded through the shuttle, as the strap-ons finally detached from our ship, and the secondary boosters were activated. Minutes later, we'd entered orbit, and the three of us finally relaxed while we awaited the third stage. "Hey, Daniel. Check it out," the pilot said as he let go of the checklist, in front of the rookie. As we left our payloads behind, the escape tower was jettisoned out. For the first time, we had an unobstructed view of the infinite darkness ahead of us. Millions of stars greeted us with their full glory. Without the filter of Earth's atmosphere, we could see as far as space reached. There, in the distance, hung a white celestial body, seemingly small and insignificant. Unknown to the general public, it would be humanity's final hope. We were moving towards it at an almost impossible speed, yet it barely felt as we were moving at all. "Wow, I don't even know what to say. It's the most amazing thing I've ever seen," he said. He spent the next few hours just staring out at space, still not willing to believe he had actually made it there. The rookie couldn't even have been out of his 20s, yet he'd been specifically recruited for a lifelong mission on the moon itself. "Tell me, was it worth it?" I asked. "Was what worth it?" "Leaving everything you've ever known behind. To have the company fake your death, and erase your presence from Earth, all so you can spend the next decade in a secret base, hidden away from mankind? I mean, you don't even know what the job is, do you?" He turned his attention towards me, finishing his string contest with the universe. He pondered for a moment, before finally responding. "All my life, I wanted to make a difference. To be one of the few to ever venture into space, to advance science. When the company contacted me, they didn't even tell me where I was going, they just said I'd be saving the world." He was smart, good physique, and socially intelligent. He could have had a fantastic life back on Earth, started a family, made a shit ton of money, and just enjoyed all of the luxuries home had to offer. Yet, he chose to help, knowing he'd never return. I knew then he was someone I could trust. "Greetings, observer, this is base control, we read you loud and clear. Station 7 is ready for docking. Get ready to initiate landing sequence." The landing was smooth, and once the airlock opened, we finally got the chance to stretch out legs. We were immediately greeted by a decontamination crew, and ordered to change out of our sweaty undergarments, and into more suitable uniforms. It was time for the rookie's initiation into the system. I brought him to the sectional office, looking for his instructor and guide, Jennifer. "Just bringing you our newest scientist. Mind if I stick around, make sure you don't go too hard on the kid?" Jenna smirked. It was a question inevitably asked by each newcomer, one she knew exactly how to answer. "Ever heard of the Manhattan Project?" she asked. 130,000 people working together to create the most destructive weapon in human history. Divided into hundreds of sections, each working on their part of a bomb to be dropped over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Out of these 130,000 people, only about a couple of dozen knew what the project would result in. The rest were kept in the dark, unknowingly causing the death of countless people. Before Jennifer got a chance to explain, the speaker system emitted a loud and jarring message. Jennifer and Daniel looked at me questioningly. The act of running on the moon was a peculiar experience. With only 1/5 of Earth's gravity, you spend more time gliding through the air before each step hits the ground. In a way, it feels like flying, and you can reach speeds higher than what would be possible back home. On the other hand, without ground contact, it's hard to maneuver around corners, which is why Ares had been built almost exclusively with straight hallways. My supervisor, Lance Henderson, took me to the side to fill me in. Particle Accelerator Weapon, Station 12, was the furthest reach away from the main base. Situated near one of the major craters. It was the last of a set of cannons aimed into deep space, weapons so powerful they could deflect any meteor getting too close to Earth. We don't know. We lost contact with them not 15 minutes ago. I need you to take a team out to the station and find out what the hell is going on. I made my way to the hangar. A massive structure situated partially underground, doubling as the main oxygen production facility. The moon's crust is naturally rich in oxygen, and by converting the rocks, we effectively produced and maintained an atmosphere within the station. What the fuck is that thing? John asked. I don't know, but keep your weapons ready. We stopped dead in our tracks as we took our first steps inside. There, on the floor, lay the entire crew of PAW-12, dead and mutilated to various degree, with no sign of any other creatures. It didn't look like monsters had come in to murder the crew, but as if they'd simply decided to kill each other, using whatever they could use as weapons. I grabbed him in an attempt at keeping him still, worried he might exacerbate his injury. Calm down, you're safe. I kept repeating. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, he cried. He calmed down a bit following the injection. Then, he looked carefully around the room, as if he was recounting the events that had transpired. His rambles were only semi-coherent, but the last statement piqued my morbid curiosity. Who? I gestured for Derek to put him to sleep. He would only make things worse by panicking. If we stood even the slightest chance of bringing him safely back to the station, he had to be put out. We boarded our buggy, and immediately got a transmission from the main bases. Buggy Zealot, do you copy? Buggy Zealot, we've lost contact with Station 4, 6, 8, and 9. We are reading multiple heat signatures on the surface, return to Ares immediately. There was a brief pause while I waited for the next transmission. Ares, you there? Then, they said words I had dreaded the most since I was assigned to the project. A simple sentence that I thought was years away from ever coming true. They're here.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
My name is Lily Madwhip and I think a magician is going to murder my best friend. I thought I was your best friend. That's Jamal. Okay, yeah, I guess he's top of my friends list. It's not exactly a big list either. I mean there's Jamal, and then there's Meredith. And she scares me. 1 and 2. And Pachar. 3. Jamal, Pachar, then Meredith, because she scares me. No, wait, Pachar first. I've never seen somebody get sawn in half. I mean, there was my cousin Susie who got run over by a motorboat, but she stayed together for the most part. Then there was a half a squirrel in my backyard, but I didn't actually see it, and besides, who performs magic on squirrels? I shake my head. He's not that kind of a magician. Well, what kind is he? He finds people's keys and stuff. You're missing the point. Oh my god, why did I even bother telling these two? Meredith is going to get murdered by that stupid magician. What if Meredith stood out in the middle of the playground so she could see the magician coming from any direction, and then if he showed up she just set him on fire? Jamal suggests. This sounds like a good plan, but I'm sure there are things about it that I'm not considering. That's how it always works in Scooby-Doo. They come up with a plan and then it backfires because of something they didn't think of. Or because someone got hungry. I'm hungry. I had a waffle for breakfast, but it wasn't fully cooked because the toaster was on too low a setting, but I didn't want to complain and have my dad roll his eyes at me, so I just ate it, but it was icy in the middle. That's a good point. He could be a marksman with a rifle for all I know. Hell, he could have the nuclear launch codes and bomb us. I can't let all the possibilities clog my brain though, I just have to warn Meredith and let her decide what to do. Jamal sees me staring off into space blankly. I mean, can't she just show them she can burn stuff, he asks. Yeah, no. I blink. There's the school ahead. I need to do this without them finding out about Meredith's ability. If she wanted people to know, she'd have shown an adult, I think. It's not my business to reveal it if she doesn't want people knowing. That's called, I don't want to be dissected, and I've thought about it a lot. Oh, yes, there she is. I couldn't see her in the sea of jerk girls. Why on earth is she hanging out with them? They're all standing around her and, oh no. Oh, I wasn't here to keep them away from her, and Lisa Welch is back and she probably saw Meredith alone and... At the same time, just as I get in range and everybody turns to look at me, Lisa Welch's red backpack with all the trinkets that jangle on it and let you know she's coming explodes into a fireball. Everybody shrieks except Lisa Welch, who has just enough thought power in her small brain to declare, "Oh my goodness," and then throw the flaming pack off her shoulders and do some sort of crazy half-dance half-jump away like she just stepped in a pile of scorpions. Maybe I should tell her she's going to do that someday. I come to a stop as everyone else steps back except Meredith and quickly grab her by the hand to try to calm her down. She turns and glares at me and I swear I can even see fire behind her eyes, but maybe it's just the fire that was Lisa Welch's red backpack reflecting off them. Mr. Longbaugh appears out of nowhere with one of those red fire extinguishers like you see in movies. I've always wanted to see someone use one in real life, so I watch, wondering if it's safe to breathe or if I need to cover my mouth. He sprays the roasting red backpack with foam while the rest of the playground pours toward us, everybody chattering about what just happened. This rumor begins immediately being passed among the other kids. I throw my hands up. I don't even have anything on me. I just got here. Meredith finally speaks. It wasn't her, sir, it was me. Lisa looks slightly paralyzed by fear. I think she's finally starting to comprehend that there was a fireball strapped to her back just a minute ago, and the only reason she's not a charred corpse we're all standing over playing whodunit with is because of some primal instinct to remove the fireball before it engulfed her. And that the person who nearly burned her alive was the girl she just pissed off by doing something mean with her Barbie doll. It's like stealing someone's Barbie and then finding out, oh, that's Charles Manson the serial killer's Barbie. Mr. Longbaugh cocks his head at me and gives me a strange expression. Didn't you? Well, you're coming anyway. He holds up one finger to make it clear that nobody is to say another word. Then he points it toward the school to make it clear we need to start marching in that direction. Apparently the answer is no. Lisa Welch, Meredith and I are marched straight into the school, down the hall and into the principal's office. Lisa looks pale as paste. Her mouth looks a little crooked, probably from falling on her face last week. She keeps her lips shut tight, so I can't see what happened exactly to her daddy's precious teeth, but I've heard there's a big chip and she's going to have to get work done. Lisa begins. We were just trying to get Meredith to play with us and then Lily came over and did something and my backpack exploded. Quiet. We all sit there for a moment. I imagine Lisa and Mr. Longbaugh are trying to work all that out in their heads. I understood what she was saying, but if you don't know what's up with Meredith and her ability to set things on fire, especially when I'm nearby, it might not make as much sense. Mr. Longbaugh leans back and rubs his bald head. I wonder what that feels like. I don't want to shave my own head because I like my hair, but I bet it'd be fun to run my hand over it if I did. Yes. Meredith hangs her head. I feel bad for her. Poor Meredith. I'm totally getting her oven mitts. I'm going to do it. I don't know how much they cost, but they can't be too expensive and I've been saving up for a while. If I get her the ones that look like sheep. I look at Lisa and Meredith. Lisa has murder face. Meredith looks sad. I want to tell her it's going to be okay, because for one thing with me out of the room maybe we won't all go up in one big volcano. And for another, maybe she'll be safer at home. Oh, wait, I have to warn her about Felix. Go, Lily. Mr. Longbaugh says in his tone that means he's about to get really annoyed that I'm still standing there instead of doing what I'm told. Oh no, I left my backpack with Pachar in it outside by the swings. I'm going to have to wait until after lunch to get them back. I hope nobody steals them. I just need to remind myself that Pachar always comes back to me. Pachar is out there doing his thing. He'll be there when I go back out. Sure enough, a half hour later the office clerk shows up and we're all told that Lisa and Meredith won't be back for 3 school days each. And there's going to be an assembly in the cafeteria planned on fire safety next week. Oh yes, that'll help us when Lisa finally sets Meredith off completely. Single file, children. Hope that the angry fire girl allows you safe passage. I just hope Felix doesn't show up for that. Or maybe that would be the perfect time for him to show. I stare out the window at the parking lot. I wonder if I'll see Meredith's foster family pick her up. It'd be good to know what they look like or what their car looks like. I'll bet when Lisa returns she'll have a new red backpack as if nothing ever happened. Stupid Lisa, she's going to be her own flaming death. I'm not going to say that though. Especially around Meredith. We groan. I hate assemblies. You have to sit in assigned rows and I'm always in front of some boy from 3rd grade who likes to kick the back of my chair and throw wads of paper in my hair. I don't even know his name, so I just call him the little twerp. I don't really know what a twerp is. It sounds like noise a rubber band makes. In fact, I'm so focused on worrying about Meredith getting shot with a sniper rifle by a man with a weasel face that I'm not even listening to what the actual assembly is about. Mr. Longbaugh is standing up front and he's got some guest speaker I can't quite see. Maybe if I were sitting in the front row, I'd be able to hear what they're saying, but I'm in the 3rd to last row in front of this little twerp who's kicking my chair. The guest speaker steps forward to the podium where Mr. Longbaugh was a moment ago with the mic that wasn't working. It hums, but now it works for her. She clears her throat and says hello. I can't see my feet, my voice is caught in my throat. But then it stops. It all stops. Every sound stops. Lily? Mrs. CD puts her hand on my shoulder. Other kids are turning to look at me. Do you see it? I whisper. See what?
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Am I going to be charged with murder? The detective sighed, and did not answer. His eyes were tired, haunted. Just help us get to the bottom of this, he said. Okay, I answered. I'll do my best. So you're the one who set up the decorations? Yeah, I said. Oh God, that sounds bad. But it wasn't just me, it was lots of people. I was mostly just supervising. That's okay, we can come back to that. Okay. So who was it that set up the scarecrow? It was me, I said. But I didn't I didn't do that. I set it up the night before. Someone must have come in during the night and... Oh God. Hey, the detective said, just calm down. You're hyperventilating. Take long, calm breaths. Do you think you can keep going? He asked. The word filled me with dread. The neighbors said as much. You destroy it every year. Yeah, I said. Usually it's filled with candy and straw. Like a piñata. The kids beat it with sticks, and everyone has a good time. I just don't understand, God, why would someone do that? It's too early to speculate, said the detective. Right now we are just gathering the facts. When did you notice that something was wrong? And then what happened? My shoulders slumped. My mouth was cottony and dry. And then, I said, the scarecrow began to bleed. And there was a pregnant pause. The detective's eyes bored into mine, willing me to continue. He said nothing, and I had to fill the silence. What happened then? The kids started screaming. One girl started it, the Oakley girl I think, and then they all went off. We, the other parents and I, we pulled them all away. We called the police and well, that's it. You know the rest. The detective scribbled his last note, and closed the full-top notebook he'd been writing in. His eyes were hard, dull gray stone, impossible to read. When he spoke again his words were measured, careful. His voice was soft. What interests me, Mr. Johnson, he said, is that you haven't asked about your wife. The question caught me completely off guard. The question poked a fresh wound. Yes, I said, forgetting my fear in a moment of irritation, she and my son are spending the holiday with her parents in Virginia. That seems strange, the detective said. A family spending a holiday apart. I got the feeling he knew something more than he was letting on. I'd like to hear your side. My wife and I are going through a rough patch right now, I said. But I don't see why this is relevant. It's personal. Yes. Fine, I said. You know. I cheated on my wife. I destroyed our family. It's all my fault. Now I've had a hell of a day, so if you don't mind, can you please tell me what the fuck this has to do with anything? Your wife is in police custody, Mr. Johnson. What? A full confession for what? What the hell are you talking about? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The room swam. Bile rose in my throat. The scream died in my throat. I blacked out.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
The Lost Year, by Brackenish 1. 2003 was a year my school refused to talk about. Something had happened. Something that drove everyone to bury the past, to silence all inquisition. I never really thought much of it. My stepsister was 15 years older than me, my dad likes cougars, what can I say? Anyway, not important. I happened to be attending the same high school she did all those years ago, and I asked her what her experience was like. She went off to work the next day, and I decided I was going to learn about her high school years. I snuck into her room and scanned her bookshelves. She was a sentimental person and had just about every yearbook you can collect over your education. I found her 4 high school yearbooks and pulled them down. Her third year immediately stuck out to me. It was so much thinner than the others. I flipped through the pictures of all the students and everything seemed normal, and it was amusing finding my sister in braces trying to pull pig off pigtails. She must have figured out bangs worked best for her later. The book became less amusing the further I looked into it. The homecoming dance, Sadie Hawkins, New Year's resolutions, then, nothing. It seemed around February that they just stopped recording the school year. They threw in some pictures of prom but no one seemed happy, they just seemed present but nothing more. I flipped through her senior year and things seemed more or less normal. I put the books back and came up with a plan. I was going to discover what happened in that lost year. Since when do you study for anything? First times for everything, right? The school kept records of major events in and around the school. Lockdowns, major sports victories, natural disasters, and the like. The librarian was reshelving some books and I made a beeline for the historical records section. I ran my finger along the dusty jackets encompassing decades. 2000, 2001, 2002, 2004, no, it had to be here. 2005, 2006. I darted my eyes up and down the aisles. These aren't books to check out, it can't be missing. What could be so terrible they removed the book? So, Tom. She smiled as she sat down. What did you want to talk about?
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I hired a locksmith to let me back inside my house. Unfortunately, I hadn't thought to read his online reviews, by Weird Bryce Guy. He fiddled with the door for a moment, retrieved some tools, and went to work. A few minutes and a change of tools later, he opened the door. It was fairly hot outside, so I went in and grabbed a water bottle for him. He graciously thanked me, and then we began the payment process. I'd been somewhat annoyed at his lateness, but the quickness of the actual unlocking of the door and his politeness had made my bad temper simmer down. But then he told me the job total, and I again became annoyed. It was well beyond the amount it quoted over the phone. But having little time to waste, I accepted and confirmed the payment, then went inside. The man's words then became reinterpreted as a threat, when I realized that I was dealing with someone who was probably unlicensed and unregistered, beyond some Google ad posting, someone who by trade could enter a home soundlessly and with ease. I wouldn't say that I'm a coward or scared easily, but I do know when to be sensibly cautious. It was around 8 p.m. when this revelation came to me. I don't have any weapons in my house, at least things intended for such a purpose, so I went to a neighbor's house, a trip I hadn't ever taken since moving into the neighborhood some 6 years before. Since we were essentially strangers, I tried my best to represent my situation in a way that would warrant his interest and support. I explained what happened, admittedly dramatizing the phone call to suggest that the locksmith would be prowling about the area, rather than targeting my house specifically. I also emphasized the truth, that I had essentially been scammed by an unprofessional, something I think everyone can sympathize with. This neighbor is an old man, but not old enough to be totally unwelcome of strangers and their problems. He agreed that I should probably have some sort of greater protection in my home than some cooking and gardening tools, even if the locksmith was just making empty threats. I was elated, and thought that I'd soon be loaned a proper weapon of some sort, but after re-entering his house for several moments, he returned not with a weapon, but with a candle. He handed it to me and said, "Before you sleep tonight, light this candle someplace near an exit of your home, any one, it does not matter. Make sure that you do not inhale the scent emitted, and rest assured that any trespassers on your property will be swiftly dealt with. You needn't worry about cleanup or anything like that. All will be taken care of." He shut the door without further explanation, leaving me standing on his front porch holding a candle the size of a whiskey glass. I returned home and set the candle on my kitchen table. It was the first time I'd had any face-to-face interaction with the man, and despite his bizarre assistance, his behavior didn't appear to be that of someone who had succumbed to senility. But of course, I was not ready to be reliant upon a candle for my safety, so I packed up some tools and brought them with me upstairs, and made sure the doors were firmly shut and locked, as if it mattered, given the circumstances of my caution. I'd even briefly considered placing obstructions before the doors, but found this to be a bit too silly to perform. The following morning, I received a visit from the police. Apparently, a vehicle had been found down the street, only recently abandoned. Recently, as in the last few hours. One neighbor had noticed it while going out for her mail, and knew at once that it didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. It was also parked too close to her house for her liking, so she called the police, who came not long after to investigate. They ran the plates, identified its owner, and tried to contact them, but had no luck in doing so. Another set of officers visited the address of the person to which the vehicle had been registered, but no one was home. The police then went around my neighborhood asking if anyone knew the vehicle's owner. It took the officers shouting my name to pull me out of the mild reverie induced by the faint scent of the candle. Not wanting to incriminate myself in the disappearance, assuming he just wandered off somewhere, I told the police that I had no idea who the vehicle could have belonged to. They gave me weird looks, but accepted my proclaimed ignorance and moved on to the next house. Once my front door was shut, I nearly sprinted into my kitchen. On the table was the candle's glass holder, however the wax had been almost fully reduced by the flame, barely a stain was left. The candle was no longer lit, the wick bent and curled by the melted wax that had solidified around it.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun, and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
My Video Game Husband is Acting Strange, by Robert Mort. It all started a few days ago. But it was weird. It wasn't one of the pre-programmed sayings I'd seen so many times. Like I made you breakfast. Oatmeal with honey, for my honey. Or how did you know I love pickled beets? It was 5 little words that I'd never seen before. It didn't even make sense. In-game, it was 7 a.m., and there was lots of light in our little pixelated house. Must be a glitch, I thought. I left him in his little corner, walked out of the house, and began harvesting my corn. When I went back in a few minutes later to drop off my harvest, he was standing next to the stove. I left the house and walked into town. Sold some stuff, even visited the mine. By the time my character made it back to the house, only 10 minutes had gone by. But in-game, that was an entire day. It was dark, and around 11 p.m., when I entered the house. I thought. He's always in bed at 10 p.m. I walked around the darkened little house, searching for him, but all I found were our 2 digital children, fast asleep in their beds. It took me a few minutes to find him. He was in the furthest corner of the farm, among the orchard trees. His legs were moving, as if he were trying to walk up the rock cliff that surrounded the farm. But he couldn't, so he was just walking in place. ///. The next morning, I'd forgotten all about the game. I made my way downstairs, yawning, to find my husband and our 2 daughters in the kitchen. He grinned widely at me. Then he walked over, and with a clink, set down a steaming bowl of oatmeal. What?
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
The only reason I moved into this apartment was because rent was cheaper after I'd lost my job and nearly burned through my meager savings. It definitely wasn't the suffocating ambience and sketchy neighborhood, and it most definitely wasn't the meal prep boxes left daily at my door. I only learned about those when the previous tenant visited me. Lita dropped by the very same day I moved in. After pointing out the leaky corners I should avoid, suggesting affordable roach traps, and teaching me how to lock the window with a broomstick, she mentioned the boxes. She had no solid answers. All she knew was what the previous tenant had told her, which is what they were told by the previous tenant, and so on. Origins unknown. Even the landlord had no idea this was going on, and Lita stressed that I must never tell him. She also stressed that I must never refuse. Why? She said protection, claiming that for as long as she'd lived here, this apartment was never robbed. Was she seriously insinuating that this stupid requirement protected her? She shrugged and said anything was possible. She didn't question the absurdity of it all, but she did question my reluctance. Now, after a month of delicious food, my unease had ebbed, but not my disdain. After I turned off the garbage disposal, I grabbed the remaining chicken and spinach tortellini and plopped down on the floor, eating my only meal today. Despite licking the plate clean, my stomach still complained, and I glared at the sink. Half a portion wasn't enough, and I was sick of wasting part of a perfectly good meal. One that I'd worked hard on, no less. I was done following these ridiculous rules. Tomorrow, I was going to eat the entire thing. And I did. In no time, the intruder had shoved a filthy rag in my mouth and yanked my arms behind my back, binding them before he lashed my ankles together. Only then did he take his weight off me and flip me over, his sunken eyes wild under a mess of hair. He was definitely on something, and it was frightening. His actions had no hesitation. He came here for something and he wasn't leaving without it. The question was, what? As he tore through my wallet in frustration, I made my way to the kitchen, my eyes on the drawers. I just needed a knife to cut through these bonds, and I could make a run for it. Balancing on my knees, I bent over and reached up with my hands, my trembling fingers searching for the handle. Gripping it, I pulled, but it didn't move. This was the worst time for it to stick. I wiggled it as I always do, but my position was less than optimal and the drawer refused to budge. And then the blood drained from his face. I followed his petrified gaze, and I screamed even louder as an unholy creature erupted from the sink. It didn't silence my screams though, and I continued to shriek through my gag as the monster continued to stab the man, its sharp legs jabbing at him like a macabre typewriter. It was facing away, but that didn't stop the spraying blood from dotting every surface of the kitchen, including me. Its convulsing stopped, and shock stole my screams as I watched its sharp legs retract into its blood-soaked fur. It now looked more like a giant fluffy caterpillar than a centipede, and my raspy breaths raced my pulse as I fearfully waited to see what it would do next. I stared in fraught disbelief as the monster began slithering across the floor, lapping up every drop of blood it came across before it stretched itself to reach the counters, walls, and ceiling. It was a lot more coordinated after eating, and that amplified my unease. Soon, only my corner was left, and it turned to me, giving me my first clear view of its face. My muffled screams echoed as I pressed myself against the cupboards, petrified, but it didn't seem to care as it licked up the blood around me. When it began licking me, my heart almost stopped beating right then and there as I was certain I was next on the menu. I peeked through my eyelids, gulping, and I frowned in uneasy confusion as it curled up beside me, laying its large head on my lap. Slowly, I allowed my screams to stop, my tense body quivering with adrenaline. It had murdered my attacker, cleaned up the crime scene, and now was snuggling. I decided to call her in the morning, but that left me up all night, thinking. Was that creature the thing we'd been feeding all this time? Was Lita right? Was it here to protect us? Was it too weak to scare off the robber before he attacked me because I'd unintentionally starved it for over a week? And despite all that, did it care for me that much that it didn't eat me, saved my life, and snuggled? Curious, I dusted it off and read it, my eyes expanding with every word. December 11th, 2013. I moved into this apartment to care for my savior. I was a hunter, you see, and I had terminal cancer. I was reckless and I didn't care when death would choose to take me. But Alesta cared. She protected me when I challenged a bear, appearing out of the blue and nearly dying herself. No one had ever done for me what she did, and I was moved by her selflessness. Alesta got injured and lost her eyesight. She was no longer able to hunt, and I felt responsible. I invited her to live with me. With the last of my savings, I signed up for 10 years of a meal prep program. I know I won't live that long. She may not either, but I still ask you, dear tenant, to continue honoring her. Every evening, prepare the meal and leave it in the cupboard under the sink. Then, go to sleep. The next morning, if the plate is still full, do with it as you wish. If the plate is empty, don't be alarmed. Just continue to honor my Savior, and you'll be safe and secure as long as you live here. Dear tenant, this is all I ask of you, fulfilling a grateful man's dying wish. Please don't mention this to anyone, especially not the landlord, but if you end up moving out, please hand this letter to the new tenant. Thank you and be blessed. I put the letter down, stunned. The creature truly was a protector. Alesta. Brought here to be cared for by a man with little time. Callum put a lot of faith in a bunch of strangers, but I guess he didn't have a choice. He could have at least told us what we were dealing with, but maybe he didn't trust we'd have Alesta's best interest at heart. I was surprised we'd all followed the rule despite how cryptic it was. Well, at least until I came along. After preparing the spicy salmon pizza, I placed it on the kitchen floor and sat cross-legged in front of it. Working up the courage, I cleared my throat and called out her name. Alesta, dinner. Food. Yummy food. I'd never met a creature like Alesta before, and I had no idea how intelligent she was. Come out, it's okay. You don't have to eat in the drain anymore. You can live out here with me. I held my breath as she poked her head out of the sink, her nose sniffing the air. She gurgled again. She seemed to like hearing her name. The one her only friend had given her. Well, now she had another friend. I gestured to the pizza and smiled before I remembered she couldn't see. This pizza is all for you. I looked down with regret. I'm sorry I didn't feed you last week. I'll never do that again. I couldn't help but tense up as she slithered over, her long slender body compressing into a bulbous form as she settled in front of me. This was going to take some getting used to. She smelled like rust and old lettuce, and I hoped she wasn't averse to baths now that she didn't have to hide anymore. No, it's all for you, like Callum wanted. As I said that, my stomach growled, and Alesta chirped in response and slid half towards me again. She picked up a slice and began nibbling, and I smiled, teary-eyed as I reached for my own slice. For the first time ever, I was glad I'd lost my job. And once I get a new one, neither of us will ever go hungry again. / Drawings of Alesta in both her forms. / SR.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
Final part. While I wasn't the best of Christians, I've always believed in God. You wouldn't see me in church every Sunday, but I would make a good attempt to go during Easter and Christmas Mass. On some Wednesdays every couple of years you would even see me with a piece of ash on my face. And number X200B. That was, of course, before that drunk driver decided that my Honda looked like it needed to be compressed to half its size. I don't remember much about the accident itself or my subsequent stay in the hospital. And number X200B. This story is about what I saw when I was dead for 6 minutes. And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. When I saw the light at the end of a dark tunnel, I guessed what had happened to me. And number X200B. And number X200B. The next thing I knew, I had a physical body. I could feel a light coolness on my skin and the soft fabric of a comfortable loose shirt and pants. The small white dots and brown moles that had littered my forearms from long days of physical labor were gone, and my skin felt as smooth as a baby's bottom. If I could look in a mirror, I would probably see a version of myself much younger than the 44 years I currently was. You done admiring the new duds? And number X200B. Normal. And number X200B. And number X200B. Here. The voice was coming from my right, and my eyes adjusted to the point that I could make out a silhouette against the light that surrounded me. The light seemed to die down a bit, and I could finally make out the silhouette. Like me, he was in a loose-fitting white shirt and white pants. And there was something weird about his hair. And number X200B. What? I could hear him the whole time. Why was he asking me if I could hear him? And number X200B. He sighed, and again I fail at being funny. Has it really been a decade? On top of the faux hawk, he also had a face piercing. If he hadn't been wearing the same loose white clothing I was, he would be at home in a Fall Out Boy concert circa 2005. It was 2018 last time I checked. And number X200B. Heaven. The emo kid barked a quick laugh. Yeah. Heaven. And number X200B. Daniel looked at me sadly. No, it's not. I just wanted to spend as much time away as possible. And number X200B. And number X200B. Why? I asked the one question I had stirring in my brain. And number X200B. I was about to ask what the hell he was talking about when I felt a sudden shifting, that stomach-dropping feeling of sitting in a roller coaster as it drops from 100 feet, and there was suddenly a gate in front of us. White pillars reached into the air far enough that I couldn't see the top. Between the pillars were bright walls of what looked like solid sheets of marble that extended far into the heavens. And number X200B. What the fuck just happened? I almost fell over from the sudden shift of location and the appearance of vertigo-inducing walls where nothing had existed before. That, he motioned towards the wall in a defeated gesture, is where we're going. Unfortunately. Daniel, I noticed a light brighter coming from the top of the wall and pointed towards it. What's that light? He looked up at where I was pointing. Don't look directly at it unless you want a blinding heatshake. And number X200B. But it had a beak. And a human mouth. And number X200B. 12. And number X200B. I felt my head jerk suddenly, and I was suddenly facing the ground, my mental faculties coming back in a sudden tidal wave. I could feel the heat of the light shining off of the angel, for that's what it must be, directly in front of me. I didn't know before this moment that light could have an intent, but this one somehow did. I could feel it, measuring would be the best word, me as I stood in front of it. The light shone through me, illuminating all of the errors of my life. And number X200B. A 20-year marriage down the drain because of a drunken one-night stand. A failure to keep in touch with old friends. Learning one of those friends had died third-hand 3 years afterwards. And number X200B. Of course, guide. The voice boomed, shaking the essence of what I was made of. You may pass. And number X200B. I felt the light move and deigned to look up. It was already drifting upwards and out of sight above the sheer walls that dominated the field of vision. And number X200B. Just stop. I yelled and pulled my hand away from Daniel's grasp. Tell me what the fuck is going on. What the fuck was that? How did it have that many heads? And it's letting us pass through. Aren't we already here? Haven't we already been judged by God? And number X200B. Sadness, yes. This time, though, there was one clear emotion on his face. And number X200B. Those are angels. If you're lucky you won't see many of them. When I was alive I thought the Bible was bullshit. And most of it is. One of the things it got right was how they looked. Of all the goddamn things for it to get right it had to describe them correctly as those mind-bleeding things. Now we really do need to get inside before one of them comes back. And number X200B. And number X200B. They're guards. R/Cotter 23.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
The museum opened without public warning. Once during the week and only at 6 o'clock in the evening, no earlier, no later. Any bratty excuse, such as a sluggish private jet, simply did not cut it. Only those outside the gate at 6 o'clock were permitted inside. No one knew where this giant playground for wealthy men was, not even God. And in this place, there was no God. My gods were the rich and famous, and they were merciless and cruel. The foyer was huge, towering golden pillars wedged between ivory-flavored marble flooring and a mosaic glass ceiling that let starlight beam through. I announced, "The tour will start immediately. There is a coat rack to your left if you need to leave any belongings. I do not recommend venturing off. I must press you all follow me for the tour, however, it's completely optional." It was as if I read off a script. Hallways were always hauntingly quiet on opening day. The museum's property outside stretched for miles, too, so no cars nor people provided any consolation for my lonely mind on long nights such as these. It was just me, the rich savages, and the exhibitions. Walking into a hallway intersection leading left to the paranormal display and to the right the insect room, we had stopped. I knew why. They saw the glass cabinet that towered by the door to the paranormal exhibition hallway, and curiosity beckoned them. It was covered by a dust blanket, only I knew what was underneath, and I knew it was best untouched. We will return here after midnight, once we've explored the rest of the dash. Yeah, give us a look. More bullies chimed in. I was no rookie to the psychological wedgie, but it was in my contract to not put up a fight. My hand reached for the fabric reluctantly like it was a hot stove. I pulled the graphite sheet away from the case and flipped the light switch. Kick 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 tack tack. Her black hair flowed onto her pale shiny shoulders like an ashen willow, her face plasticky and silky smooth, the flesh of a child's doll. Beneath the glass cube, Mariette, 1973 to 2004. There were a couple gasps from the rich folk. My jaw tightened. She injected herself to death with plasticizing agents. In fact, that is one of the loopholes as to why we can keep her body here on display. Her body is more plastic than flesh and bone. Kick kick kick. That story is absurd. A man boomed. Unfortunate, sure, but woefully true. I rebutted. The other loophole being her will. She wanted to give herself to the museum just as, I paused. The museum had given itself to her. The lights inside the case came back on. My heart sank into my stomach. Clicking noises had not been coming from the lamps after all. Creaking had come from her plastic joints twisting and contorting, old plastic grinding against itself like a cursed figurine. Now visible, her head had been creaked to one side. She stared unblinkingly at me with glass eyes. Dampening the sheet with my sweaty palm, I narrowly managed to quickly toss the fabric, covering the glass before anyone noticed that she had readjusted her head when it had been dark. Can we touch her? I want to feel her rubbery, plasticky skin. Sends chills up my spine. Another one said. We shall be moving on. I extended an open hand to the hallway. This way, please. For some exhibits, I held on to the harrowing details. To feed them specifics would be like planting seeds of trickling intrigue in their minds, and intrigue led to an unsated curiosity. Curiosity always killed the cat, no matter the feline, a rich breed or a stray tom. I didn't tell the wealthy people that the doll hated her glass prison. I didn't tell them that we closed her eyelids so she could sleep. The remaining billionaires were silently yawning. Deep down I knew what they wanted to see. My chest tightened. At that moment I thought that I was beginning to hate my job. Curiosity had killed the cat. Please excuse me. I muttered and sprinted into the dim alley of the museum towards the paranormal wing. Moments after I had started running, I realized I left the doors open to the butterflies. Behind me, the sounds of shouting and pitter-pattering as the tourists sprinted the opposite direction. They were running from the floating creatures, running for their lives, running from deadly venom. It was too late, I had to keep going. My heart sank. I already guessed what I was about to find ahead. The evening was no longer going swimmingly. Around the bend, I found one woman crouched against the wall by a window. She was a ball of tears, clasping her head with two hands. Glaring at my watch, my stomach knotted. It wasn't midnight yet. It wasn't midnight and somebody broke Mariette's display, and she was gone. Just like the woman crying beside me, I think my throat became tight, too. What is this thing? She said, staring at the peach wall. I couldn't think clearly. She was out there somewhere. Clicking her ghoulish joints, towering in the halls, searching for more plastic so she could become the perfect ventriloquist's doll. The doll she had become so fixated with working here. She would be a doll, and we would play with her. Just like she would play with us. Finger-like blobs from the wall reached back out at the woman, thick apricot worms searching for warmth. She gasped, and I realized my mistake. My contract was broken, and my head shall be on a spike. I raised my hand to calm her. I apologize, ma'am. This strange thing is made of living cells. Without knowing, I was back on tour guide script, despite the trauma. The very thing you're trying to poke at could eat yo dash. We stood there a while, both unable to think nor speak. I stared at the wall unblinkingly like watching a hot fire, its flesh molding, changing. Peach goo flowed in waves across its surface, inviting me to look closer. Underneath on a golden placard, the living wall. I shook out of it. He wasn't following. Mr. Jones. I turned to him. Richard Jones was still standing next to the woman who had been crying in a ball minutes prior. He didn't speak, only glared back at me in the dim starlight that flowed through the window. The wall ate her whole, fleshy goo displaying her features and flesh wide on its waving surface. Bits of arm and mouth suspended upon a hungry blanket. I felt sick, I was going to throw up. The wall's voice was deep and hard to make out at first. A woman's voice, deep in its slimy crevices. Richie, it moaned. Chie. Sprinting and sprinting, I never looked back. I climbed the stairs swift enough that my thighs felt like they were going to give out. When it was midnight, Mariette was asleep, and I shut her plastic eyelids for her. I had glass to sweep, cabinets to repair. The exhibition that made me quit was the sickening consequence of true human freedom, and it was only for me to see, once a week. Maybe I couldn't quit, I needed to repair it to make things right. Kick, kick, kick. Before shutting the gate, I pensively peered around the grand foyer. The museum was large and harrowing. For a moment I wore a grimace on my face, remembering a time when all I needed to satisfy our guests was to show them insects. I had been here a long time, tales dripped from the walls like an endless flowing tap of horror. There would be more wealthy visitors. I think I might have more stories to tell.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Me and my friends were some of the many people to go swimming there despite the rumors. We absolutely loved the lake, with its crystal clear waters and bizarre lack of animal life. We'd spend many every summer there, never leaving until our skins had turned crispy red, or by the tempting promise of ice cream from our parents. Years passed, and the three of us were about to graduate high school. While we were naturally excited to move on to college and new adventures, we desperately needed one last hurrah to say goodbye. So, in the summer of 2019, we decided to solve the mystery of the missing children. Thanks to our part-time jobs, we'd been able to save up a decent amount of cash. We used some of it to purchase cheap bird-watching cameras. Our plan was to place them in the areas where the kids had last been seen. It just so happened that most of those areas were within Eboracum Woods, concentrated around the lake. The whole area was weirdly shaped, which meant we'd have to keep an eye on parts of the lake ourselves. The center in particular was hard to get a view of from shore. Nevertheless, we set out on our venture to save our town, thinking nothing could stop us. By the time we'd placed our cameras, no one had gone missing. We were hoping to catch the moment as it happened, and swoop in to stop it. In hindsight, it was a poorly thought out plan, but we were teenagers, what else could one expect? The summer went on with little incident until the first week of August. Then, a kid by the name of Alex Florence had inexplicably gone missing in the middle of the day. He'd last been seen throwing a ball around with his sister by the lake. He was only 7 years old. We went through the footage, but couldn't find anything. The only part we hadn't yet investigated was the center of the lake. I had just spent some extra money on a waterproof camera, and figured we could at least find out where the current went. We connected the camera to a flashlight, and tied it to a rope. We took a canoe, and paddled past the barriers, ready to finally solve the mystery. Though we couldn't see the bottom of the lake, we expected it to be around 50 feet deep. 20 feet. 40 feet. Then, we saw something else. It was just a tiny hole that opened and closed, pulsating like a mouth trying to chew on something. It only opened for brief periods of time, which is probably why it went unnoticed for so long. Nevertheless, it produced a current that immediately sucked in our camera. It got pulled through a tiny tunnel, small enough for a child, but too narrow for an adult. The camera sunk even deeper. At last, we could see the cave floor. It was littered with hundreds, if not thousands of animal and human bones, left to be forgotten for all of eternity. That's when we pulled the camera back up. We'd reached our goal, but another kid had died. Next, we just handed the footage over to the police, and that was it. This year, when we visited our hometown for the holidays, the lake had been completely blocked off.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
What we found 1,000 meters below the sea makes me not want to live anymore, by Chike de Luna. About 3 years ago I was a science reporter on board the North Atlantic research vessel, Baseline Explorer. We were roughly 20 km off the coast of Bermuda at the time, and I was getting set to go down in a two-man submersible, something I'd wanted to do since I was a kid. The submersibles are miracles of engineering. They can withstand up to 25 EAs, Earth atmospheres, which basically means 25 times the pressure at surface level. That's the equivalent of an ant moving around with 12 jumbo jets parked right on top of it. I'll never forget the sensation the first time I slipped down through the bubble's hatch. I was scared. I knew what to expect, but I didn't expect the bubble to be so small. It felt claustrophobic, like climbing down into a tumble dryer, but it actually wasn't so bad once I was seated. We had a panoramic view of the world through the wraparound glass, better than IMAX, but as the ship's crane lowered us into the water I couldn't help wondering whether this was the last time I'd ever see the sunlight. My publishers wanted a video essay of a deep-sea dive in one of the subs, which made sense seeing as my job was to report on all the functions of a scientific research vessel, but we were going down close to the sub's limits, almost 1,000 meters, and suddenly the whole thing was very daunting. But Percy quickly put me at my ease. He'd been down over 100 times, and in his opinion it was safer than driving to the neighborhood liquor store. As the sub descended into the depths it felt like we were motionless for long periods of time, like we were just hanging there in an eternity of blue-tinted space, but Percy assured me we were still descending, still going down, the water becoming bluer, darker, the deeper we went. There was a second submersible trailing us like a ghost. The pilot was an Israeli guy called Avi. He was a stoic son of a bitch. I'd been on board the Baseline Explorer 3 weeks and I'd never seen him crack so much as a smile. He was nicknamed the Machine. The name fit him like a glove. As co-pilot of the sub it was pretty much my job to keep the glass clear of condensation, so every few minutes I'd give the inside of the acrylic bubble a wipe over. The rest of the time I was filming and commentating on whatever I was seeing around me. We're almost 1,000 meters underwater and it's pitch black. We're in the midnight zone. Not a single photon of light is able to get down this far. The only source of illumination is our searchlights. We're just fixing to start heading back when suddenly Percy kills all momentum. He sounded scared. Only the sound of our breathing now as we both stared out into the pitch blackness. There was something out there. I couldn't see it, but I could sense it. Something was watching us, and I've never felt anything like that before. I was an atheist at the time, but afterwards I would describe it as a religious experience. I have no idea what I meant by that. I was in shock at the time. I don't know what the fuck I was saying. What is it? I barely recognized the sound of my own voice. It sounded thin and childlike, like suddenly, in a heartbeat, I had regressed to infancy. I gripped Percy's arm. What's out there? I turned to him. It's haunted my dreams ever since. That disc with the black circle in the middle had been a fucking eye that measured 20 feet across, and to this day my skin goes cold when I remember it, this colossal eye staring at us out of the dark, and the intensity of that gaze was beyond human comprehension. It was an intelligence measured in eons, it was an evil beyond scripture, beyond reason, and it laid its immemorial gaze upon us, and we were blighted by it, scarred by it, destroyed by it. And then the machine snapped his searchlights off and the darkness took away that awful vision, but not the memory of it. I felt despair unlike anything I've ever experienced. A black terror filled my heart, that eye, Jesus Christ in heaven, how big was the monster that possessed that eye? It felt biblical. I didn't have to look at Percy to know he was feeling the same thing. That eye did not belong to a thing of reason or nature, it was not a thing of science, it was a monster. It was the mother of every nightmare our children wake screaming from. And even as I thought this, Percy whispered, "Curse that day, those who are ready to rouse Leviathan." And to my ears he sounded like a dead man quoting scripture. My therapists all said it was a hallucination. The winged beasts were horrific looking, some kind of hybrid. They carried pitchforks and branding irons, and some of them had the heads of birds and the bodies of men, and others were reptilian monstrosities, but all of them, I sensed, were filled with a black hatred for humanity. Percy was screaming the Lord's Prayer, and I remember my mouth stretched wide, gaping in horror, and tears streaming down my face, and then, that awful fissure slowly closed, and I think it was that moment I realized I had been staring into the mouth of that creature. The machine hung himself a week after returning home. His wife found him. He left a note. A single word in Hebrew. Leviathan. I'm trying to put it behind me. It's been 6 years and I'm the only one left. The days are getting better, but I dread the coming of night, sinking down into sleep the way we sank down into that abyss, terrified of what awaits me in my dreams. God bless us all.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
My sister thinks her son is extremely gifted. But I fear something far more sinister is happening, by A10. My sister, Susan, knew there was something different about Maddie within a few months of his birth. At the age of 13 weeks he was already using basic words like yes, no, and mama, and he could put simple sentences together at the age of 5 months. I'm no expert in child development, but I've heard countless times that he acquired these abilities at an exceptionally early age. Almost supernatural. Some people just outright don't believe it. Imagine looking at a tiny little 5-month-old child, do you realize just how small they still are, and have him look at his mom and say, I don't want to pee in my diaper. Want to go to potty. And he was toilet trained just like that. Never an accident since. Someone told me before that most babies don't even say the word mama until they are around 10 months old and don't potty train until about a year and a half. And things just kept getting stranger with Maddie. He somehow taught himself to read well before he had turned the age of 2. It started with just common words on street signs and billboards, but shortly after he turned 2 he started reading magazines and newspapers that he would find around the house. At this point, he was already speaking at about a grade 5 level. In preschool he was correcting the teacher's spelling while the other children in his class were still struggling not to pee their pants and to put 3-word sentences together. He would sit with his preschool teachers at lunch because he claimed he found the other children boring. Until today, I hadn't seen Maddie since he was first starting preschool. Almost 5 years ago now. I was visiting my sister back then to help comfort her as she tried to get past an unfortunate situation. Maddie's father, who had always been entirely reliable and trustworthy, just up and left the family and has still to this day never returned. I remember asking my sister if there were any signs that he was unhappy. She replied that she couldn't think of anything. Things were going great. And then he was gone. He still sends money to the family, lots of it, and even writes the occasional letter to my sister. But there's never a mention, not even a word, about Maddie. I arrived for dinner with my sister and Maddie a few hours ago. My sister and I were so excited to see each other when she opened the front door. We hugged. We laughed. We asked and answered the regular questions customary of family who haven't seen each other in ages. While his eyes seemed to say, I know everything about you. I know your flaws. I know it all, his voice and tone were very different. Hello, Uncle Philip. You look well. I had lost a lot of weight the past 5 years. He nodded at me in approval, and I hate to say it, but I loved the feeling it gave me. His approval. As I started to answer, Maddie waved his hand away, as if to show he was no longer interested in the conversation. I was sitting in the living room browsing the internet on my phone while they finished up the dishes. Based on where I was sitting, I could see a mirror in the kitchen that reflected towards Maddie doing the dishes at the sink. I was staring at him through that reflection, still puzzled by the things he said to me that evening. And then I heard my sister say to him, "All right, Matthew, finish up those dishes, then you need to get ready for bed." "You know the rules," she interrupted. Then she left the kitchen. And that's when I saw, through the reflection of the mirror in the kitchen, Maddie's face began to change. Drastically. It became bright red and, I promise you this is what I saw, his head seemed to grow in size. His eyes bulged out and his ears appeared to grow pointy. He grabbed a large knife from the sink and stabbed it quickly and violently in the direction towards where his mother had left the room. Maddie thought he was alone in the kitchen and that nobody could see him. But I actually saw the realization written all over his face when he remembered the mirror. He looked at it quickly and locked eyes with me. I opened my eyes and saw Maddie standing right in front of me. There was no cut on his neck. There was no blood. He spoke to me. When my sister returned to the living room, I made up an excuse and abruptly left her house. I remember walking across the driveway towards my car and having the uncanny feeling that somebody was watching me. I turned quickly to look up towards Maddie's window, almost sure he'd be looking down at me with that smile on his face. But there was nothing there. And then I figured it out. "John?" I asked. My sister's ex-husband and Maddie's father who had run out on them. "Wait, was that you watching me when I left the house? Did you follow me here?" "I saw something all those years ago, Philip. And I saw the look on your face when you left that house tonight. Something happened. You should stay away, Philip. You should never go back there. You." "Wait a second," I interrupted. "Is that why you left them all those years ago? What did you see?" He paused and started breathing heavily. He said one more sentence and then hung up the phone. "I saw pure evil." Part 2.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
Little Big 209, "Hi Brad. Lovelace cuck, looking good Brad." My pixelated reflection cringes. Whoever took me from my home has not bothered to change me into anything more presentable. I still have a food-stained t-shirt and boxers on. My chin is covered in peach fuzz, left over from a weekend of sitting around drinking and gaming. It's not a good look. I jump out of bed and walk over to the door. It's locked. There is an A4 sheet of paper taped to the oak panel at eye level. It's a printed list titled, "Tip Goals." Earn 5 tokens to turn off the alarm. Earn 10 tokens to get rid of the woman. And number X200B. A deafening noise blares through the room before I can get past the second bullet point. It's shrill like a car alarm, but it comes from everywhere at once. It's a volume level that doesn't exist on any human device. I press my palms to my ears, stick my fingers inside. My hearing starts deteriorating, fast. I run back over to the screens. The chat room layout is similar to a cam site, with a large thumbnail showing that I have earned 0 coins for my show. And number X200B. Lemon unmatched, take off your shirt. Tasty /Testy69, show us that dad bod. And number X200B. I pull off my shirt, flinching as my gut bounces down. The tips roll in. Lovelace cuck tips 2 tokens, L111 Kmi gives me 3. The alarm stops. My body relaxes and I sit back down on the bed, rubbing my temples. Everything is happening too fast. I need a second to arrange my thoughts, study the room. My naked toes pinch the shag carpet beneath my feet. My eyes run over the whitewashed walls. There is no furniture apart from the bed and desk. There are no wall sockets. Little Big 209, don't look her in the eye. I remain seated on the bed, arms pulled tight around my gut. My eyes water as I stare at the white of the chat room screen, unblinking. The woman sits down beside me. Why are you ignoring me? The voice changes, gets deeper, look at me. Her palm clenches my leg, nails digging into my skin. She brings her face close to mine, the tip of her nose grazing my temple. My body breaks out in cold sweat, like I'm dreaming, feverish. The woman opens her mouth. I think she will say something, but she doesn't. The mouth stretches, gapes, extending far beyond human possibility. I feel the breath from her cavernous mouth on my ear. I hear saliva dripping off the top layer of teeth. A lock clicks. And number X200B. Earn 5 tokens to turn off the alarm. Earn 10 tokens to get rid of the woman. Earn 25 tokens to save Hallie. Earn 50 tokens to turn on the oxygen pump. Earn 100 tokens to unlock the door. My stomach sinks when I read Hallie's name. She is my childhood best friend. We used to spend all our time together, but then I tried kissing her at a party and got mad when she rejected me. Things haven't been the same since. Hallie still calls and we engage in small talk, but that's about it. What does she have to do with all this? Inside you 22, now you're alone. ITBURNS / and how is Hallie doing? My harrowed face is gone. It's replaced by video footage of a neat bedroom. The color theme is green-blue, floral. There are potted plants and paintings, small throw pillows adorn the canopy bed. I'd recognize her eye for decorum anywhere. This must be Hallie's new place. I'd been meaning to stop by since she moved. How long ago was that, exactly? A couple of weeks? Months? A year? It slithers to the edge of the bed, up the side of it and under the covers. I punch the screen and cry out. My scream is emotional, raw, but ultimately pointless. Pixels dance on the feed, but the image holds steady enough for me to see the way the blanket moves on top of Hallie. I glance at the chat. And number X200B. Joe Cocker Spaniel, get under the covers. Wallfly 13 / lie under the blanket. Lemon unmatched, get into bed and it will come to you instead. I turn away from the screens and crawl back into bed, pulling the covers over my head. What the hell happened last night? The longer we lie together, the darkness and me, the more singular we become. I think about the way it entered Hallie's room, the way it climbed into her bed. Once I start picturing it, the entity moves, almost like it's responding to my thought patterns. It wraps itself around my body entirely, slipping its coolness between me and the sheets. It stretches to cover my head until I am cocooned inside. I shiver. And number X200B. Inside you 22, you are so close now. Joe Cocker Spaniel, isn't this what you wanted? No, I croak at the screen as my vision turns black, help me. Just like that, I am able to breathe again. It's a hit like no other. My lungs reel in pain, but my brain explodes with the ecstasy of life. The door swings open and someone walks into the room. I watch their black dress shoes glide across the floor. I sit up and take in the person's appearance. I don't know what to make of it. They are neither tall, average, nor short. Every step they take shifts their proportions considerably. They are slender, but muscular. Effeminate in movement but masculine in stance. They have long gray hair, but it lacks the volume and styling of a woman's cut. They wear a tailored black suit with a lace-trimmed blouse underneath. They are the personification of neutral. If beige were a person, they'd be it. We need to talk about your life, Brad. Their deep, authoritative voice fills the room. I've been watching you. We all have. What is this place? I choke out, my throat burning from my recent suffocation. No. I open my eyes. Curly tits, we have a lot of fun. And number X200B. I walk up to the blackness, observe it. It grows, expands. If I don't make the choice myself, it will still happen. The void will fill the room and swallow me whole. It would be so easy to climb the bed and fall through. I reach my left hand into the hole and a sharp pain pulses through my arm. I recoil, stumbling back. My hand is blistered, charred. The skin bubbles. The void grows faster now, sucking up the bed, inching toward the floor. No way am I subjecting the rest of my body to that black fire. I run to the door, the list still in place. And number X200B. Earn 100 tokens to unlock the door. And number X200B. /////. And number X200B. 3 empty bottles of booze stand on the desk. The first one is my regular choice of vodka, but the other 2 are plastic, unlabeled. I recognize them as the moonshine my neighbor has been trying to sell me for weeks. I have politely declined his offers in the past, but maybe last night was different. ////. And number X200B. More light as I come to. Fluorescent bulbs dance above my head, then stabilize. Machines beep and whir. I can move my arms and legs, but only a little because I am so weak. My left hand is covered in bandages. You sure did a number on your hand there, Brad, a familiar voice chides. What dash, I stammer, it was real. Your choice to stay alive. The person raises an eyebrow as they remove the bandage on my arm catheter. Yes, it was. The room, the rules, I mumble, my insides turning. I thought it was a nightmare, a hallucinatory side effect of alcohol poisoning. I want to close my eyes, to blink this person out of existence. I stare at the person. I imagine my face is blank, stupid. I didn't try to kill myself. I raise my voice, my undamaged hand curling in a fist. There are other ways to invite death into your life, Brad. The person starts removing the bandages from my hand. I stare in disbelief as patches of black become visible. My hand looks like it suffered severe frostbite. I can't move any of my fingers. The rest of the day passes in a blur. A doctor comes and goes. More nurses, all normal. They ask if there's anyone they can call, but I say no. In the evening, when I'm left alone, I take my phone from the nightstand and dial Hallie's number. Brad, she practically squeals in my ear, I'm so glad you called. I haven't heard from you in ages. How are you? Brad?
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
I was the first to notice an extra person had joined our group. I counted 6 of us sitting around a campfire, but I knew we had left home with 5. The 6th person had joined us somewhere along the way, but where and when exactly I could not be sure. I had to go through the faces one by one. I went through my history with them, recounting how I met them, how I knew them. I fit each one into my memories like puzzle pieces. First, there was Mark. He was sitting next to Sarah, chatting her up as always. I met Mark and Sarah 6 years ago in the 10th grade. Mark and I played wide receiver together on the school football team. Sarah was a cheerleader, and Mark always had a thing for her. The 3 of us started hanging out after games, Mark flirting non-stop, and Sarah always hilariously rebuking him after a while. Then there was Ben. We had been best friends since the 1st grade. Inseparable ever since we bumped heads playing tag during recess. He had his arm around his longtime girlfriend, Justine. She started at our school when she moved from Chicago in the 7th grade. Ben sat next to her in English, and soon she became a part of our group at the time. She was quiet and shy when she first arrived. But once we got to know her, she opened up. She was one of the coolest and nicest people you could ever get to meet. She had also become close with Sarah in the past few years. And then there was the 6th face, the piece that did not fit. I stared at him, and his name escaped me. That is if I ever had it in my memory banks in the first place. He looked familiar, but I could not place him in my memories. Oh yeah, Mr. Smith. I was telling Justine how you could rile that guy up like nobody else. Remember that time you handed in an assignment printed in yellow ink? I can still see the steam coming out of his ears. I was struck with the sense that he was studying us. My skin crawled. You really know how to push people's buttons when you want to, huh? Justine said. I shrugged. I was having trouble focusing on the conversation. The weight of the situation, the reality of it, was starting to hit me. How had no one else noticed yet? Why had it taken me so long to notice? Was I going insane? Did I have amnesia and forget this one friend of ours? What in the hell was going on here? No one else flinched. Justine kept talking. I always loved the long relationship you and Ben have. It was so hard moving cities and leaving all my old friends behind. I mean, I can't complain too much, I wouldn't have met Ben and all you guys otherwise. Huh? Oh him, he's she trailed off. She frowned into the fire. I could see her mind ticking over, and her eyes twinged with concern. I knew I wasn't going crazy. We stared at each other. Maybe Justine was cut off. An ear-piercing screech came from the woods. It sounded like a shrill, injured cat. A large cat. The sound split the air and cut our conversations short. A blanket of silence fell over the 4 of us, only the crackling campfire persisted. The woods were still and quiet. The fuck was that? Mark broke the silence. I don't know, Sarah said. I've never quite heard an animal like that before. Sarah agreed. Justine bit her lip and scanned the woods. Mark and Sarah had started up their conversation again when the strange man bumbled out of the woods. They paid him no mind. I was hoping something would have triggered in them by now, but they were oblivious. The strange man took a beer from the cooler. He fumbled with it, struggling with the tab. It was as if had never opened a can before. When he finally had it open, he sat, beer in hand, and continued to watch Mark and Sarah, a thin smile on his face. He never did take a sip. He moved with jerkiness and awkwardness, like a newborn animal. Nothing he did was smooth or well practiced. It made everything he did look like an act, an imitation. I didn't make the connection at the time, but I should have seen this man was not quite human. But at the moment I wasn't sure what to think. I guess I just thought he was a freak. I considered calling him out, then and there. I wanted to ask him just what the fuck he was doing. But I'll admit I was scared. I had visions of this guy being some horrific serial killer, and I didn't know how dangerous he was, or if he was armed. I didn't want to push him into doing something drastic that got us all killed. I needed to stop him. We used an axe to chop firewood for our campfire, and it was leaning against my seat. This man was dangerous. I was sure of it. I convinced myself I needed to do something before another one of us was next. "Porter, where's Ben? I'm getting nervous." I stood with axe in hand. "I'm going to get some more firewood," I announced more awkwardly than I hoped. It was as if he teleported. "Where were you? Why did you take so long?" Justine asked. I looked for the strange man, but he was gone. He somehow slinked away while I was distracted. He was good at going undetected when he wanted to. My thoughts turned to getting out of there. Even though Ben was unharmed, that guy was still trouble. I started back towards the group and caught the middle of their conversation. "Yeah, isn't he your friend?" Mark added. "I thought he drove over with you three." "Yeah," I said. I explained to them how I noticed he was the odd man out when we were sitting around the fire. I explained the odd behavior, and they all agreed the guy was strange and possibly dangerous. None of us could pinpoint exactly when he had joined the group. He had slipped in unnoticed and unaccounted for, it was uncanny. We packed our tents in record time. We trekked the 15 minutes to our cars through dark woods, flashlights in hand. We heard the screech of the elk again if it was an elk, which I have my doubts about now, and we took some comfort from the fact it sounded farther away. Even so, we picked up our pace for the final stretch of the walk. I felt like I could finally relax behind the wheel and locked doors of my SUV. Justine and Ben sat in the back, while Mark and Sarah followed behind in Mark's beaten-up Ford Laser. I thought we were free and clear. I pressed on the accelerator. I slammed the brakes. It was too late. The tires screeched, and there was a smell of burning rubber. The strange man folded over my bonnet and got sent flying down the road. He skated across the pavement on his back, moving with such speed it looked as if he was gliding on ice. Mark flew past in the opposite lane, fishtailing. He fought it, and for a moment I thought he had it saved. But the car hooked right into the trees. Everything felt surreal as shock coursed through my body. It was as if I was watching through a screen. I floated over the asphalt as Justine and Ben sprinted towards the steaming wreckage. The crash seemed dimly lit by my SUV's one remaining headlight. Mark was unrecognizable. He was a shattered mess of bone, skin, and blood, melded and intertwined with the crumpled steel. My voice was small and distant as I explained what happened to the operator. She told me to stay on the line, but as I looked down the road, I dropped my phone. The strange man was standing there. His grin reached from ear to ear, showing a grandstand of teeth. His shoulders shrugged up and down as if he was laughing. If I were not in shock, I would have gone after him right then and there. I would have torn his heart if he has one right from its chest. But all I could do was stare, mouth agape, struggling to keep the tears behind my eyes. The strange man started for the woods. I watched him go, and I watched him change. I saw it. I know I did. This was no illusion. No trick of the mind. This was real. I saw its true form. I'm going back to those woods. So help me God, I'm going back. I'm coming for the goat man. And I'm not stopping until one of us is dead.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.